Welcome back to the Fame Files, where we dig into the stories, behind the headlines and the people who live them.
Yeah.
Today we're off to Corby, Northamptonshire.
Oh, Corbin.
You probably haven't heard of it.
Right.
But this small town with a big steelworks history became the center of a shocking environmental scandal.
It's a case that really makes you think, doesn't it? On
Yeah.
the surface, it's about toxic dust and a landmark legal battle.
Right.
But at its heart, it's about the extraordinary courage of a group of ordinary mothers
Right.
who took on powerful institutions to protect their children.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about Susan McIntyre, Tracy Taylor, Maggie Manna.
Wow.
These women became accidental activists facing off against the Corby Borough Council.
Against the council.
And it all started with a seemingly routine regeneration project.
Regeneration project.
Gone wrong.
Yeah, you have to understand Corby's identity was deeply intertwined with its steelworks.
Mm-hmm.
For decades, it was the lifeblood of the town.
Oh.
But when the British steel industry declined in the 1970s,
Right.
the Corby Steelworks shut down in 1980.
1980. Okay.
Thousands were left unemployed, and the town was struggling.
So the council wanted to revitalize the area.
Revitalize.
Pretty understandable goal.
Of course.
But as we know, that's where things took a dark turn.
Yeah, dark term.
Can you walk us through what happened?
Well, the council launched a massive regeneration project,
Okay.
which involved demolishing the old steelworks and reclaiming the land.
Reclaiming the land.
Now, by reclaiming, we mean they were trying to clean up the site and make it usable again.
Okay.
But here's the problem.
Yeah.
This process involved moving millions of tons of contaminated waste to a quarry on the outskirts of town.
Millions of tons of contaminated waste.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got contaminated waste.
Contaminated.
What kind of dangers are we talking about here?
Endangered.
This wasn't just your average household garbage, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
We're talking about heavy metals, toxins, all sorts of nasty stuff left over from the steelmaking process.
And to make matters worse, this waste wasn't handled with the care it required.
Oh, no.
Imagine open-top trucks carrying this contaminated material,
Right.
driving through residential areas
Yeah.
with toxic dust literally blowing off
Wow.
and settling over the town.
Wait, they were just casually transporting this hazardous material through where people lived?
They were.
I can't even imagine what the residents must have thought.
I know.
That seems incredibly reckless.
It was a recipe for disaster.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it wasn't long before a disturbing pattern started to emerge.
Oh, no, a disturbing pattern.
Mothers living near the reclamation site began to have children with limb deformities.
Oh, God.
Some were born missing fingers,
Wow.
others with shortened limbs.
That's awful.
Devastating consequences.
Yeah.
Naturally, people began to worry about a possible link between the toxic dust and these birth defects.
Well, these mothers start noticing this terrifying trend.
Right.
And they raise concern.
And concerns.
How does the council react at this point? You'd think alarm bells would be going off, right?
You would think.
But the initial response was lackluster, to say the least.
Lackluster.
A study was conducted in 1999.
1999.
But it concluded there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. No unusual cluster of birth defects.
No unusual cluster.
Case closed, according to them.
I bet that didn't sit well with the mothers who were seeing these issues firsthand.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They weren't convinced.
They weren't convinced.
And thankfully, neither was Des Collins, a solicitor,
The solicitor.
who became aware of the situation in Corbin.
Hmm.
He smelled something fishy and decided to do his own investigation.
His own investigation.
What he uncovered was shocking.
What did he find?
Collins found that the rate of birth defects in Corbin was significantly higher
Higher.
than in surrounding areas.
Wow.
His findings directly contradicted the previous study.
So you have these mothers who are essentially being told there's nothing to worry about
Right.
while they're seeing these heartbreaking health issues with
Yeah.
their children. Heartbreaking. Then the solicitor comes in and says, hold on, something's definitely wrong here.
Exactly.
What happens next?
This is where the mothers of Corby, Susan, Tracy, and Maggie really step into the spotlight,
Okay.
fueled by a fierce determination to get justice for their children.
Justice.
They joined forces with Des Collins and decided to take on the Corby Borough Council
Wow.
in a landmark legal battle.
It's a classic David versus Goliath scenario.
That's right.
These mothers with limited resources are going up against a powerful institution.
Power.
I'm already on the edge of my seat.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of evidence did they have to back up their claims?
Well, one of the key pieces of evidence was the presence of cadmium at the former steelworks site.
Cadmium.
Cadmium is a heavy metal that's been linked to birth defects, particularly in animals.
So they had this smoking gun.
Smoking gun.
Proof that this harmful substance was present in the environment where these children were born and raised.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the judge ultimately ruled in favor of the families,
In favor of the families.
stating that there was a direct link between the council's negligence in handling the toxic waste and the children's health problems.
This wasn't just a win for these families, was it?
No, it was.
This is a much wider implications, right?
You're absolutely right.
Wow.
This ruling was a landmark decision in the UK.
Landmark.
It marked the first time a British court recognized that airborne pollutants could harm unborn babies,
Unborn babies.
setting a powerful legal precedent for holding institutions accountable
Accountable.
for environmental negligence and its impact on public health.
Wow.
It really shook things up.
Talk about a victory.
Yeah, a victory.
But even with this win, I imagine it wasn't a smooth road for these families.
No, it wasn't.
Did the council just accept defeat and take responsibility?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
The council initially disputed the verdict and even planned to appeal.
Oh, wow.
However, in 2010,
Putting 10.
they finally reached a private settlement with the families.
So while they got some form of justice and recognition of the council's wrongdoing, it was a long and arduous battle to get there.
It was.
What I find so compelling about this whole story is the human element.
Yeah.
We've talked about the legal fight, the scientific evidence, but we can't forget about the real people whose lives were turned upside down by this environmental disaster.
Absolutely.
Right.
Behind the legal battles and scientific jargon
Yeah.
are individual stories of heartbreak resilience and the unwavering love of mothers fighting for their children.
Wow.
Each of these women has her own unique story,
Yeah.
and I think it's important to hear them.
Well, let's dive into those stories.
Let's dive in.
Because I think that's where the real emotional impact of this case lies.
That's where it is.
I'm eager to learn more about these women, their experiences, and their incredible strength in the face of adversity.
Okay.
Let's start with Susan McIntyre.
Susan McIntyre.
From everything I've read, she's a force of nature.
A force of nature.
Incredibly vocal and instrumental in bringing this issue to light.
Instrumental.
She really spearheaded the movement. And then there's Tracy Taylor,
J.C. Taylor.
whose story is just heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
Her daughter Shelby tragically passed away just 4 days after she was born.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the pain she must have endured.
I know.
To lose a child is devastating enough, but to then have to fight for justice on top of that, it's just unfathomable.
It's a testament to her strength and her love for Shelby that she didn't give up.
Yeah.
She kept fighting for answers for accountability.
Right.
And then there's Maggie Mann, whose story really brings home just how pervasive the toxic dust was in Corby. There's this image from the sources, Maggie handing her husband's work jeans outside to dry and having to beat the dust out of them with a badminton racket.
Wow, that image is so powerful.
Yeah.
It wasn't just some abstract concept.
Right.
This toxic dust was literally woven into the fabric of their daily lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These women weren't just fighting for some abstract legal principle.
They were fighting for the health and well-being of their children, their families, their entire community.
Their story has resonated with so many people, especially since the release of the Netflix drama Toxic Town.
Toxic Town.
Which has brought renewed attention to the Corby scandal. Have you had a chance to watch it?
I have, and I think it does a fantastic job of humanizing this story. Jack Thorne, the writer, is known for tackling complex social issues with a lot of empathy and nuance.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of what these families went through.
Yeah.
But he also highlights their incredible resilience and the powerful bonds of community.
I've heard great things about the performances, too, especially from the actresses who play the mothers.
They are phenomenal.
Wow.
Jodie Whittaker, who plays Susan.
Jodie Whittaker, okay.
Amy Lou Wood, who portrays Tracy, and Claudia Jessie as Maggie.
Okay.
They truly embody the spirit of these women.
I love that this series doesn't just focus on the mother's perspective, though.
No, it doesn't.
We also get to see the story unfold from different angles, right?
That's right.
Okay.
The series also explores the viewpoints of the council, the legal teams, and even a fictionalized property developer.
Oh, interesting.
Who represents the economic forces at play in the situation.
It's a good reminder that these issues are never black and white.
No, they're not.
There are often multiple layers of responsibility, competing interests, and unfortunately unintended consequences.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes the series so thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking.
It encourages us to consider the complexities of the situation.
Right.
And grapple with some difficult questions.
Like what?
Who benefits from these regeneration projects?
Mm-hmm.
Who pays the price?
Right.
How can we balance economic development with the health and well-being of communities?
Those are really big questions.
They are.
And they're not just relevant to what happened in Corbin all those years ago.
No, they're not.
They're questions we need to be asking ourselves all the time in our own communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the Corby case serves as a stark reminder.
A stark reminder.
Of the dangers of prioritizing economic gain over environmental responsibility and public health.
It also underscores the importance of transparency and accountability.
Transparency.
Especially when it comes to development projects that could potentially impact people's health and the environment.
Right.
And the power of community activism.
That's right.
Those mothers showed us that even in the face of what seems like an insurmountable obstacle, ordinary people can make a difference when they band together and refuse to be silenced.
That's right.
It makes you wonder, though, what could have been done differently in Corbin. If those in power had listened to the community's concerns early on, could this whole tragedy have been prevented?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a tragedy on so many levels.
Yeah. It is.
But I think what we can take away from this, what we can learn from the mistakes of the past, is that we need to be more vigilant.
What's wrong?
More informed and engaged citizens.
We can't just sit back and assume that those in charge are always acting in our best interests.
We can't.
We have to ask questions.
Ask questions.
We have to hold our elected officials accountable.
Accountable.
We have to be willing to speak up and fight for what we believe in, just like the mothers of Corbin did.
You hit the nail on the head. And you know, it's not just about grand gestures or becoming a full-blown activist.
Right.
It starts with being informed about what's happening in our own communities, paying attention to local developments, attending town hall meetings, contacting our representatives.
Those everyday actions can make a difference.
They can.
And if something seems off, if you notice something that raises a red flag, don't be afraid to speak up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, as we've seen in Corbin, the consequences of silence can be devastating.
Speaking up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the portrayal of Roy Thomas in Toxic Town.
Roy Thomas.
He's that character who represents the Corby Borough Council, right?
Yes. Roy Thomas is actually a composite character.
A composite character?
He's based on several figures from the council.
Okay.
Which I think is an interesting creative choice.
Right. It seems like they'd combine several real-life figures into one character.
Mm-hmm.
Probably to streamline the narrative and perhaps highlight certain aspects of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while it's important to remember that there are some fictionalized elements in the series,
right,
the core issues and the struggles of the families are very much based in reality.
So even with the fictionalized elements, you feel like the series captures the essence of what happened in Corby.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful and emotionally resonant drama.
Powerful.
That has sparked crucial conversations about accountability, corporate responsibility, and the long-term consequences of putting profits before people.
And it's brought this story to a whole new audience, which was fantastic.
It is.
What do you think the legacy of the Corby case is, both in terms of legal precedent and the impact it's had on raising awareness about environmental justice?
I think legally it's a landmark case.
Landmark.
It set a precedent for recognizing the link between environmental pollution and public health. And it's empowered communities to fight for their right to a healthy environment.
Right.
But beyond the legal ramifications, I think the Corby case is a testament to the power of human resilience and the importance of speaking truth to power.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a voice and that even the most vulnerable among us can make a difference when they stand up for what's right.
Yeah, it's a story that stays with you for sure. It makes you want to take action, being more aware of potential risks in your own community.
Right.
Speaking of which, I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what can we do? How can we apply the lessons of Corbin to our own lives?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think the mothers of Corbin have given us a blueprint for action. It starts with being informed. If there's a new development project in your area, don't just assume everything's above board.
Right.
Dig a little deeper.
Exactly. Look into the potential environmental and health impacts.
Right.
Are there adequate safeguards in place? Are community voices being heard? You can usually find this information online through your local council or environmental agencies.
And don't underestimate the power of connecting with your neighbors. attending community meetings, and voicing your concerns if something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
If you see potential risks, speak up.
Sometimes just starting a conversation can make a difference.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends and family, share what you've learned about Corbin. You might be surprised how many people are unaware of these issues.
It's true. We often think these things only happen somewhere else. But Corbin's a reminder that environmental injustices can happen anywhere.
Anywhere.
And they often disproportionately affect marginalized communities who don't have the resources to fight back.
That's why it's so important to be allies and advocate for those who might not have the platform or the power to speak for themselves.
Couldn't agree more. And if you're feeling inspired to learn more about the Corbin case, where should people go?
Well, as we mentioned, Toxic Town on Netflix is a great place to start. It's a dramatization, of course.
Right.
But it captures the emotional truth of what happened and really brings the story to life.
And for those who want to delve deeper into the facts and the legal battles, there are also some excellent BBC documentaries that cover the Corby case in detail.
Absolutely. And while the Corbin case is specific to the UK, the themes of environmental negligence, corporate responsibility, and community activism are universal.
Yeah.
There are Corbys happening all over the world, sadly.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in holding those in power accountable and ensuring that economic development doesn't come at the expense of people's health and the environment.
Well said. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. What lessons from Corbin resonate with you? What can you do in your own life, in your own community, to ensure a healthier, safer, more just future for all? Keep those questions in mind. And remember, the mothers of Corbin, their fight is our fight.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Corby toxic waste scandal. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.